What is the difference between tolerance and acceptance? I'm Justine Gonzalez. Welcome to this episode of Love Learning You. And it's early morning on my patio. I had to bring you all out on my patio, show you my new earrings. I love these lady earrings with the little pearl. Um, but she's looking out at you while we speak. And this morning, I am drinking a ceremonial grade matcha that I mixed with a little bit of cardamom, wildflower honey, and then a little bit of ice, as well as the matcha and coconut milk. So, cheers to you today. I want to ask you, how are you loving learning you right now? I changed the name of this podcast about a year or so ago and rebranded because I was on a mission to really enjoy learning about myself and develop more authentic self-love. I think in my 30s in particular, I'm coming up on my 41st birthday, so this has been my year of chapter 40. But I think that in my 20s and 30s especially, and this is pretty normal for most humans, we're trying to figure out purpose and identity. And amidst all of that, there's all of these things in the world, man's world, not the creators, but man's world, and we all have these tendencies, and part of the human experience is it's resolving the internal conflicts within us. And one of the common questions I get doing cultural psychology research through the years and also consulting with different organizations and school districts is, what is the difference between sympathy and empathy, and then also the difference between acceptance and tolerance, and then how do I know where to draw a line, so to speak. One of my LinkedIn connection colleagues, he wrote an awesome post about this the other day, so shout out to Kelly Blackman. But he was talking about the similar vein of, where do you decide to draw the line, so to speak. And he gave a brilliant example of breaking down some very specific actions that in the human brain we would typically paint as good and bad, or good and evil, loving versus evil, pain versus joy, suffering versus love as well, and acceptance of ourselves. But he broke down Kobe Bryant, Hulk Hogan, as well as R. Kelly, because R. Kelly's still alive. I'm also in the Chicago area, so I was intrigued and I thought, where is he going with this? But the comments are so rich. So anyways, I'll link him below in this video, this episode. But I wanted to just, you all know I've gotten used to doing some patio episodes. And I love being outside. So it was a dream of mine. We will get back right away to acceptance versus tolerance. I have a point. I'm going someplace. But since I was probably like, I don't know, 15 or 16 was maybe the first time I saw a chair similar to this. It's a little hanging egg chair. And I love to swing. I always loved to swing as a kid. So I've always wanted one. I finally got one for myself. And I was asking myself the other day as I was building this and working up a sweat out here, I was asking myself, why did it take me so long to spend $150 on a chair that I've wanted for like over 20 years? Like, I've seen other people get them. One of my good friends had one. She stayed in New York, and I was like, oh yeah, get it. But I wasn't ready, partly because I was in transition. I was moving a lot, so I didn't want something extra that I had paid for and then not be able to take it with me or have outdoor space. So anyways, all this to say, acceptance versus tolerance. When we are out in our worlds, whatever that may be, maybe you have public, private, and personal life. We all do as a human experience. And that just means there's things we've accepted about ourselves that we are perfectly okay with talking about. And that's public. That's our public life. There are personal things that we keep really probably with close personal connections. And then we have what's called a private life, which is really, everybody has these things that probably nobody knows or will ever know about you. And it might not be that it's just so secretive or bad or anything like that. That's, I think, where my mind goes, is like, well, why haven't you accepted it, right? Because some of the things we're just not aware of. We are doing things on autopilot that sometimes we've done since we were kids, and we don't really realize it because it's really hard in distraction, dysfunction, and disconnection, and the destructive actions and behaviors we see in our world sometimes. It's really, really difficult to find acceptance to say, okay, this situation didn't make sense, or I don't know why, but here I am now. And some of those things, because we haven't even just asked ourselves the right questions, I don't even think it's that deep sometimes. I think it's because, again, all those D's I named, destruction, division, all the things. But I think it's because we are so fixated on everything else around us in the world. And that could be comparing ourselves to others, could be being obsessed with something like a pay raise, or finding our purpose or worth in the fact that we lost a job on the flip side of it. And acceptance versus tolerance, to me, is when I have resolved a particular issue or topic or situation in my life to accept the whole parts of it and still love myself wholly and completely, and also can respect and or love the other person involved or the organization involved, etc. And what I mean by that is, forgiveness is not it's not about necessarily tolerating the really destructive behaviors or perhaps harmful behaviors that a person or organization has committed towards you. It is about the acceptance of this happened, and can I forgive that situation and still see that person sitting across from you, or that organization who either didn't give you a raise or let you go, or all the things that I see so many people struggling with, and I have struggled with many, many times through the years. And then tying that to self-worth, when I've gone back to it in full circle with this chair, my chair, it's because I wasn't willing to accept things about me. And part of that for me specifically has tied to money mindset and what I think I'm worthy of or deserving of. And there's a lot tied to it. It was just asking myself the right questions. Questions like, how is money talked about in your home growing up? Questions like, how many of those patterns and habits do I find myself still saying or doing today? Or just not even spending time to go, yeah, that sucks, and I'm just going to avoid it. So be careful when you start asking yourself questions, because you just might realize how much more you love yourself. And that is why I went through this transition too, of saying I want to embody. I am big on embodiment, not just saying something. So when I really want to embody a chapter of my life, meaning excuse me, maybe I have a new goal, or I want to accomplish something, I do everything possible to embody it, even if that's not the situation at the time right then. Why? Because how will I be able to handle, so say that I do get this really big raise at a job. I'll keep giving this scenario of workplace because I know it's a big one here in our lives on earth. But say that I am fixating on something, I start to unpack it, and I go, okay, what was my role in that? That is probably the hardest step when we start to feel into a new chapter or something that maybe hasn't manifested yet, but we can see it. It's right there. We can see it. And we also have to feel, how would my nervous system and physically even my body feel if I knew, okay, I'm going to go pull up my job board, or I'm going to go pull up my bank account, whatever it is. How would that be different in my life, and why? So the first part of even manifestation, in my opinion, it's been a buzzword for years, but it's a biblical theory. It's a scriptural theory. You can read about it in multiple holy texts, not just the Bible, but this idea that we are given all we need and more to succeed with the lives that we've been given on earth. It is because of destructive systems, structural, systemic, systematic, created and developed by man and continuously perpetuated by us, modern day humans. And we have to decide every day to wake up and go, am I finding my self-love and my self-worth and my value because of an external source? be that a job or a contract or a number in the bank account, is that how I'm still saying, okay, I feel okay? That's what regulates my nervous system. That's what makes me feel loved. And can we go to the mirror and say, I wholly love myself and accept myself. I am loved, loving, and lovable. And do I really believe that? Do I really believe that? Or is there something lying in my subconscious that says, yeah, no, but look at your bank account, but look at your pay rate at work, but look at how this person's treated you. Look at how who stole from you. I did a post the other day about business betrayal and betrayal in general, right? Betrayal in general, that can really rock our sense of self-love, which then directly impacts our self-worth, how we show up, whether that's in the workplace. I've talked a lot about workplace here, but that spills over into those personal and private life. So outside of whatever you particularly may be experiencing today, and let's try not to label it as good or bad, it's your experience today, right now on earth. How much do you love yourself? And underneath that, if you don't, and you find that you go like I have in the past, and still sometimes with different parts of life, you go, oh, I'm working to love myself on that. Ooh, I'm struggling with that. Ooh, that was kind of ugly when I said that or I did that. That's part of holding ourselves in a healthy accountability with ourselves and the higher consciousness and God. That's my belief. And I'd love to know yours. I know I've bantered with so many people on social media in the past few months and really been focused on building different channels and listening to the comments, monitoring myself and how I engage, how I react, and how I respond, because come on now. We have all taken to situations and places. I don't care if it's at a store or on a social media platform. We were not in our best form of our character. And we're all going to have those times. So full circle, back to even the post that I referenced. I'll drop his details below. But full circle, how are we actually deciding this is where I draw a line? And again, that's inspired by Kelly's post that I saw on LinkedIn, and it just got me thinking so much more deeply about so many questions I get all the time about acceptance versus tolerance. Well, how do I know? And one of the questions I keep asking myself is, why do you need to know? You are not the judge of anybody but yourself. And that can be tricky, especially if you have personality similar to mine. If you and that can be a lot of personalities where it's not necessarily negative. It's what makes me great at strategic planning. It's what makes me great as a researcher and analyst, because we are able to look at a whole picture, assess it, and pick it apart, synthesize the details and see, oh, we could fit this with this. Okay, we could solution here, da 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 da. Or let's sit with it here and then see what solutions come forward, blah, 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 all the things. But that is precisely because I'm filtering the whole situation. And sometimes that can sound negative to people, like, oh, that person's judgmental. That's a whole other episode for another day, so I'll bookmark it. But judgment is very different than analyzing and naming truth. And sometimes when truth feels uncomfortable or hurts, we mistake it for somebody being judgmental or somebody actually being mean. And I've had those situations, and I have to ask myself then, what was mean about what that person said? Was it their tone and the energy and vibration of how they said it to you? Or was it the actual words? Or what was it? Or was it because you didn't like what they said, Justine, and it rubbed you the wrong way? It made you turn a little red, and it got you all heated up, like, well, how could they say that to me? So I think it's a great exercise when I sit back, I try to become an observer. I wore my little ladies to remind me, because, she's watching me. My little lady's on the shoulder. But I hope today that you're taking care of you. And let's continue to get compassionately curious first about ourselves, so that we can get more deeply knowing and curious compassionately about others and their walks in life. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Be sure to hit subscribe. It really helps me continue to do great patio talks like this, and I just like interacting with you all. So feel free to drop some comments. We have some more great interviews coming with featured voices throughout the coming months, and a little bit behind on editing right now, editing schedule, and had some great speaking engagements and stuff this summer. So we'll get those squared away for you all, and we have some really phenomenal interviews coming. I think the next one I'm going to release is with one of my colleagues who also happens to be a professional singer. Okay, talk soon. Take care.